Time now for perspective. 3.5 years after the UK voted to leave the European Union, Brexit is now just hours away. But in reality, midnight this Friday, Brussels time, only signifies the start of a complicated negotiation process, with the precise nature of the UK's future economic and trade relationship with the EU still very much up in the air. Well, my guest today is Olivier Campenon, Vice President of the Franco-British Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much for coming on to speak to us today.
Good morning.
Now, Brexit is, it's hard to believe, finally upon us. Just how momentous a moment is this for the future of trade between the UK and France, do you think?
It's definitely a symbolic day because it closes 3.5 years of negotiations. But we've just started. We're now starting the real negotiations for the future. And actually, as of the end of today, nothing will have changed. And I think it's important to remember that the business, the trade will continue as before. There's now a period of 11 months until the end of the year to negotiate our future trade agreement. And that's very short. Think about it, 600 different treaties to be renegotiated in 11 months. So it's probably impossible. So the challenge now is going to be to prioritize what to negotiate first. For the business, it's an important day because we've avoided a first risk of the famous hard Brexit, a famous cliff edge. But now we're looking at it very carefully, making sure that along these 11 coming months, there'll be enough time to negotiate on this free trade agreement that we're all asking for.
And is 11 months enough time? Boris Johnson thinks it is. Some people in the EU aren't so convinced.
Probably the story of the past 3.5 years have taught us one thing. Time is very flexible. So it might very well be that it's a negotiation position and that it will be extended as it goes. But I think we need to take it very seriously. There are some elements that are very important. I talked about trade, but specifically we have fisheries, which is a high risk for all of our fishermen, especially in Brittany, but also for finance. And so here, clearly the clock is ticking. And actually the plan is even shorter because everybody expects to have elements of agreements by mid-year. So yes, we are in an urgency mode that will be extremely, extremely important for all of the businesses. So you can actually see today that the businesses are, again, relieved because we've passed this first hurdle, but we are going to be very cautious looking at what's happening next.
And is that what business leaders, business owners are telling you, that they're trepidatious, possibly some excitement too? Change
in business is always opportunity, and it's always opportunity for more businesses. So I think if you look at the figures, the Chamber of Commerce, the Franco-British Chamber of Commerce, have actually launched a new barometer to really measure the relationship between France and the UK. And it's very interesting. And we've actually published our second barometer and compared with the numbers of the year before. Believe me, 6% growth in the trade between the two countries. We moved from 92 billion to 97 billion. So it actually have grown, despite the Brexit. What does that mean? Of course, there's been a push for a number of UK companies to increase their storage, and that has explained an increased demand. But it just says that Brexit may actually, again, bring some opportunity for everybody.
And how are French companies preparing for Brexit specifically?
They've actually been prepared over the past 3 years, clearly very strongly for the big companies, as well as for mid-sized companies. But it's been a challenge for the SMEs because the SMEs sees that as...
And what exactly are SMEs, for those not familiar with the term?
The small and medium enterprises. And so these small and medium enterprises have so many other priorities, business first. So they've actually seen Brexit as a future event. I think now we are at the point where they need to get prepared. And that's what we've been doing with the Chamber. We've actually organized more than 50 events along the year by theme, like talking about logistics, what is important to do business, HR, cybersecurity, and by helping them understanding how to get prepared. So I think the 11 coming months will be the time now. They know it's happening. They will be finalizing it. But the good news is the vast majority of companies are prepared.
And Brexit could, in fact, be extremely good news for a number of large European cities, with a number of businesses looking to establish bases in the European Union, businesses currently based in the UK.
Choose France, choose Paris. And you may have seen that. It's been in the air for quite some time now, but it's been successful. And I think Paris is actually winning. I don't like to put a competition between European capitals, but Paris has actually done well, attracting more than 130 companies, more than 5,000 jobs being created in Paris. So yes, clearly some of the businesses is moving from the UK to Europe and to Paris. And for the most, I think for 2/3 of them, it's financial institutions.
And during this transition period, this fraught transition period, what do you think are the main risks for businesses on both sides?
The challenge for the business is uncertainty. And as we're going to go through the 11th month, we'll be asking as businesses for free trade agreement. What does that mean? It means clearly green level field. And that means that we want to avoid any types of quota, any types of dumping, and that's very important. So if we get the impression that along the 11 months, it actually goes south and it doesn't go that way, it may actually create some uncertainty. But I'm very positive, and I think the past months have shown that both parties have been very pragmatic.
Now, there has been a fair amount of speculation in recent months that London could become a so-called Singapore on Thames post-Brexit, low-tax, low-regulation economy in a bid to compete more effectively with the bloc. How likely do you think that is, really?
Honestly, I don't believe it. Think about it. Would you go in competition with your #1 customer? If you look at the trade between the EU and the UK, almost 50% of the ins and outs of the exports and imports between the UK and the world coming from the EU. So I wouldn't see the UK taking the risk of getting in a fierce competition with their first customers. So, of course, there'll be a temptation to reduce the fiscal rates and so on. It's already been the case, and it probably will continue, but not to the point to where Singapore is.
And lastly, do you think it is going to be possible for trade between the UK and France to remain as close as it has been historically?
It will be different, but they are our neighbours, they are our voisins. And I think that will not change. The fact that we have speed train between the two countries, the fact that it's just a channel away, will actually continue to strengthen the relationship between the two countries. And again, that's part of our role at the Franco-British Chamber, is to make sure that we look at the perspective of the relationship for prosperity. And we're looking at it not only for next year, it is important, but on the long term. And the relationship, the Entente Cordiale, has actually demonstrated how close we are to each other.
A nice optimistic note to end on. Olivier Campenon, Vice President of the Franco-British Chamber of Commerce and Industry, thank you very much.
Thank you.